Good morning or good afternoon. This is Nick Rudolph, the Baltimore Regional Director with Maryland Capital Enterprises, and I'm here to talk to you about the first steps in starting your small business. So we're going to talk a little bit about who we are as Maryland Capital Enterprises, go into some information about starting your business, talk a little bit about business plans and cash flows and access to capital. This is a small group, so if you have questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and just interrupt me. I'll also be stopping a few times throughout the presentation. I'm going to turn off my video just because I don't like staring at myself in the face. All righty. So first, a little bit about who we are. We are Maryland Capital Enterprises. We've been doing this for a while. We started back in 1998 as a small lender doing small businesses on the Lower Eastern Shore of Maryland for about $500 a loan. We grew, we developed a relationship with the SBA and became an intermediary lender. Back in 2012, we decided to hop over the bridge so that now we're serving all of the Eastern Shore and the Baltimore region. We'll get into more of that in just a second. So what we do is we offer financing, access to capital, so as an SBA lender, but we also offer free consultations to small businesses. That can be through one-on-ones, through Zooms, through webinars like this, through classroom sessions. And those are all free whether or not you ever apply for a loan. So we can help you discuss one-on-one with your cash flows, your business plans, your marketing, all kinds of things like that. We're also an SBA designated women's business center, so we have enhanced services for women-owned businesses as well in both Salisbury, our main office, and Baltimore, our satellite office. So you can learn a lot more about us at marylandcapital.org and Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org. So, what does it mean that we're a lender? So, we are, designated by the SBA as an intermediary lender, but that does not mean that we lend SBA funds. In fact, what the SBA does is it backs our loans. It says, we trust you to make a good decision, but if the loan doesn't work out, we'll give you back a certain percentage of that, which allows us to take on loans that might be a little bit too risky for a bank. Where we do get our money is through other state and federal sources. So we get it from the Department of Treasury, the USDA, the Maryland DHCD, and Departments of Commerce. We also raise money through private foundations and banks. So if you get approved for a loan, we're going to get you into whatever pot of money makes the most sense for you. And again, we do provide that counseling and training, whether or not you apply for a loan. So what are the areas that we serve? So of course, anybody is welcome to take advantage of our webinars and our classes and our women's business conference. But as far as access to capital is concerned, we serve the entire Eastern Shore of Maryland, Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Cecil, and Harford counties, and Baltimore City. If you are not in one of those jurisdictions, you can still talk to us about access to capital, and we will find a group in your area that can help you out. But now let's get into the first steps to starting your small business. So the first thing is, ideally you're coming here, before you've done anything, you've just got a business idea. So that's what I'm talking about as the perspective of this. But really, wherever you are in your business planning or growth, you can always jump back and do these things. So the first thing is, when you think about a business, you want to think about it as a building. So if you go down to downtown Baltimore, you might see an empty lot with a fence around it. And on that fence, there's a poster of a big skyscraper that's going to be moving in. And then for 12 to 18 months, it looks like nothing's happening, but really what's happening is that they're doing all of the prep work. So they're figuring out the environmental studies, they're making sure the ground can hold the business, they're trying to understand who's going to be the subcontractors, how that's going to pop up. And then after a year spent on what I like to call foundation building, they start building up, and then within 6 months it's a bustling mixed-use property. Same thing with your business. The more time you spend before you open doing that foundation building, doing that planning, the stronger your business is going to be and the easier it's going to be to start making money. And what that's going to take is a lot of planning, a lot of creativity, and a lot of hard work. If you want to become a business owner because you are looking to, have an easier life than working for somebody else, you might want to rethink stuff. Business is hard work, but it is very rewarding. So, why do people start the businesses? Of course, you want to make money. Maybe there's something you're good at or interested in that you want to show off. You've got a hobby that you think you can make money doing. You get to be a little bit more flexible as your own boss, and also it helps you develop another career. You've been sitting behind a desk for 20 years. You might want to do something a little bit different. But, here is the scary slide. It is a risky proposition. And while these numbers can be scary, 80% of all new businesses closing within the first 10 years, it doesn't tell you the whole picture. A lot of businesses close on purpose. They were developed to solve a problem. That problem is solved. A lot of businesses are owned by serial entrepreneurs. This happens a lot in the restaurant industry. A Michelin star chef will open up a concept that, let's just say, is, high-end Chinese food. After 5 years, it's doing well, but he's bored with it. So he shuts that down and opens up a high-end Thai restaurant in the same place. Technically, that first business closed, but it was for a good and positive reason. But the truth is, no matter what, it's still pretty risky. But the more foundation building you do, the more you're able to mitigate some of that risk. So, these are questions that you would want to ask yourself before starting a small business. You're not going to answer them in this order, but they are things that you really want to be thinking about. So, first is the why. If you can't articulate why you want to start a small business, then you really want to think about, whether or not this is the right thing for you. Then you want to think about, what kind of business do you want? And that doesn't just mean what are you selling, what are your services? It also can mean things like, um, do you want to be online? Do you want to be in person? Do you want to have a business that's set up to franchise, or do you just want to be a mom and pop operation? Do you plan on passing this down to your family? Do you plan on selling the business? You want to really be thinking about all of that stuff when you're deciding what kind of business you want to do. Then you want to think about your ideal customer. Sure, everybody can be your customer in most businesses, but you need to find the demographic that's going to be paying your bills. The folks that if you can get them in your door, you're going to do well. So if you're opening up a hair salon, let's say in downtown Baltimore, you might say, look, we'll cut anybody's hair, but based on our location, and what's going on, we're really looking at our prime customer being, women who are African American between the ages of 35 and 65 who, make a high income, because our rent is pretty high downtown. If you get those folks coming in, you're probably going to be doing all right. You want to think, of course, of your products and services. You also want to think about your time commitment. If you've got a family, if you've got another job that you want to keep, are you going to have time to start that business, or are you going to be able to make time to start that business? So then you want to figure out what differentiates you from the rest of the market. We'll go into that in the business plan. Again, your location. Are you home-based? Are you brick and mortar? Are you online? Will you need employees? Are you a consultant that's just working on your own? Or are you going to open up a restaurant where you need, line cooks and chefs and servers and people and things like that? You also want to think about your suppliers. So all of your inventory, all of your food, anything that's coming in, even the paper for your printer, who is going to be supplying that? Are you going to be able to get discounts? Are you going to be able to get credit? How are you going to get the things you need in order to make your money? And then also, how much money do you need to get started? Starting a business is always going to cost money, and you need to figure out where you're going to get that funding from. And the first step in that is figuring out how much you need. Then you need to figure out how you're going to get that funding. And we live in a world where it would be great if there were lots of grants for small businesses, but really right now there isn't. The most common kind of grant for a small business is that if you're in a historic commercial district, like a main street, like one of the neighborhoods in Baltimore, you might be able to get a facade improvement grant that will pay for a portion of your signage and outside work, things like lighting, security cameras, awnings, brick repointing, and things like that. Then you want to think about how long it's going to take before your product is available. So if you get that loan to get started on July 1st, when are you going to be able to start making sales? Is this something that by August 1st you're going to be open, or is there a 6-month lead in? And if so, how are you going to make your loan payments during that time? You also want to think about how long it's going to take you to start making a profit. There's a lot of expenses at the beginning, so you might not be making money the first few months. But if after 6, 8, 12 months you're still losing money, something is wrong. So you want to make sure that you understand how long it will take to make a profit and then you want to stick to those numbers. As far as your competition, no matter how unique your business is, you have competitors, and you want to understand how they are surviving in the marketplace, what they are doing well, and then what is going to be your special sauce. What is going to be the thing that gets people to come through your doors instead of theirs? How will you be able to survive and thrive in the market with them? And when you're thinking about competitors, you want to think sort of locally and globally. So we had a comic book store. The owner said, look, here are three competitors, these two comic book stores within a half-hour drive of me, and Amazon, because we know that people can buy our products on Amazon.com and they're coming to us for our customer service. You also want to think about your price points, how your business is set up legally. Are you going to be an LLC or a corporation? And that makes, based on you and your situation, it could go either way. What kind of taxes will you need to pay? You need to start thinking about quarterly taxes, which is just a regular taxpayer you don't really need to think about. What kind of insurance do you need? All small businesses are going to need insurance. General liability policy for a really basic business might be $750 to $1,000 a year. But if you start involving kids, food, animals, medicine, the elderly, anything like that, that is going to start to go up. You also want to think how you're going to manage your business. Are you going to be doing the day-to-day, or are you going to hire somebody to do that? And then how you're going to get the word out about your business. Are you a traditional advertising business, or are you a B2B business where you need to be going to conferences and getting and talking to people and networking in order to get your clients? So, before we go into the 10 steps, are there any questions about, the questions we want to think about before starting? Yep. All righty. So as you will see, this is a numbered list of 10 steps to starting your small business. It's good to know that these are not listed in order of importance or necessarily in the order you're going to be doing these things in, but they are all very, very important things to do. So firstly, get business assistance and training. There is nowhere in the country, I'm going to say this numerous times throughout this presentation, there's nowhere in this country where there are more free resources for small businesses than this Maryland, D.C. area. Take advantage of all of us. Ask us all the same questions. We have different experiences. You'll be able to get a great idea of the whole business landscape the more you take advantage of things like this. Look out for things like accelerator programs where you're in a cohort, over a certain number of weeks. That's usually high-end training and often has a pitch competition at the end where you can actually win free money for your business. So you're both learning and have an opportunity to get some capital that you're not going to have to pay back. Also, you need a written business plan. That does not mean you need a book. Business plans, especially when you're looking for access to capital, they're going to be read by people who are reading a lot of business plans. So you want to make sure that you're keeping them concise while having all of the information in there. So if you've got a pretty basic business without any, weirdness to it, your business plan might be 3 to 7 pages. If you've got something where you need to be showing a lot of charts and a lot of pictures, of course, that's going to start getting longer. But we're not looking for 100-page business plans. You want to understand your employer and responsibilities. That means, if you are employing folks, are they going to be actual employees or contractors? And if, for each of them, you want to make sure that you're paying the right taxes, the right fees, and you're reporting it correctly. Again, you want to choose that business location. That's thinking both like what county or city do I want to be in, and also do you want to be home-based or brick and mortar? Determining the legal structure of the business. LLCs can take away some of the risk from the business owner. Corporations might have a little bit less restrictions, so you really want to talk to a lawyer to figure that out for yourself. Then you want to think about registering your business. And what you need to do with that is go to the IRS, get your EIN number, and then go to the Maryland Department of DSAT, what is that called? The Maryland Business Express. Sorry about that. That's where you'll be able to sign up, get your LLC or your corporation, become in good standing with the state, and be able to get all of the resources that we offer. But when you're naming your business, you want to think about, your entire entrepreneurship life, because the age of a business does matter a lot of the time. So if you think that you're going to be a serial entrepreneur or you want to have a lot of small businesses, I might say, look, I'm going to have Nick Rudolph LLC, and under it, I'm going to have Nick's Dill Pickles, Nick's Kimchi, Nick's Biscuits, whatever it is. And then that way it's all under one business with a bunch of DBAs doing business as, so it's all under the same umbrella. Again, you're going to register with the state. You want to make sure you're paying your local taxes if you have those. You're going to get all your licenses and permits from the county or the municipality or both. You want to think about your financing. We're going to go into detail about how the loans work, but there are other financing options. And then your marketing plan, which as we go through the business plan, we'll find out is much more than just how you're going to advertise your business. So these are 10 steps to start a small business. Notice it doesn't say the 10 steps because there will probably be additional steps for you based on your business type. So the one thing that you really want to understand with your market is, in your marketing is more than just getting the word out, understanding where you fit in the market. And that means both locally and globally. It means physically and financially. And what's going to happen there is it's going to reduce your business risks. It's going to help you determine that there is room in the marketplace for your business, and it'll help you determine the place to location your business. It will also help you identify upcoming trends or maybe some problems with your industry that you might be able to fix. You're going to identify sales opportunities. It's going to help you drill down on your primary customer as well. And the way you show that in your business plan is through data and citations. So what you want to do is you want to use the internet, you want to use industry publications or government websites, join your Chamber of Commerce. All of these places are going to be able to give you information about your business and where it fits in the market. You want to find articles and then pull a quote or two out and cite those articles. Pardon me. That's going to help us understand that you know where you fit in the market and that what amount of growth you can see. But of course, as you're starting your small business, there are advantages and disadvantages. But before I go into that, were there any questions about those 10 steps or anything previous? All right, so here is a pros and cons list. This is not exhaustive, but it's a good way to start thinking. So of course you can be your own boss, but you're going to be working a lot. You can't be fired, but your success is based on the amount of work you do, the amount of planning you have, but some things are beyond your control. And so therefore there's always financial risk no matter how much you plan. Your income can be determined by your own efforts, but again, that's in a best case scenario. And if things aren't going great, you might go without income for a while. You're doing something that you love, but in order to become an expert, you might need additional education or training. You also want to think about, do you really want to turn something you love into a job? Will you lose your passion for that? These are tough questions that you need to ask yourself. You also need to understand that, for the first year or two, you're probably not going to have a lot of time for yourself or have a lot of time for vacations, but you are building something that's helping build a community. That's why we're here helping to build small businesses, because small businesses build communities. And your business is going to help others by providing a service, providing items, and then providing jobs for folks. You're helping the economy of your entire area. But, while you don't have bosses, really everybody is your boss. Your customers are your boss, your employees are your boss. If you get big enough, your shareholders are your boss. So even though you're the owner, you are going to be answering questions to a whole lot of people. Now, I did mention that there aren't a lot of grants, but if you're in one of these industries or if you fit one of these, there are sometimes grants available. The best place to find those are at the Department of Commerce, the Department of Aging, DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. Those are going to be the folks in the state who know if there are these grants available. As of right now, as I said, other than the facade improvement grants, I don't know of any, but that's why you ask lots of people, because nobody knows everything. So, what are your keys to success? What do you need to do in order to make it? So the first thing is you need experience in your industry, and that can come through actual experience, through education, or through a mentor. You also want to think about your business management experience, and it doesn't need to be in your industry. It can be, if you were managing a Taco Bell through college like I was, Then you were dealing with employees, you were dealing with scheduling, you were dealing with budgeting. So this is all stuff that even though I'm not going to be selling tacos or Mexican pizzas, there's a lot of stuff that transfers over in there, and that is that type of experience is valuable and important. So you want to think about this very holistically. Number three, can you recognize and improvise to solve problems? A lot of small business owners, when they do have time, take comedy improv classes just to work that muscle so that when a problem does arise, they're used to improvising, they're used to yes-anding, and then they can solve these problems and fix them in creative ways that sometimes turn the problem into into an asset. And then if you don't have those skills, how will you gain those skills? So, a checklist of things in addition to this that you want to make sure that you're doing. Number one, check your county and local zoning requirements. The last thing you want to do is do a build out and find out you're not allowed to have the business where you are. You also want to check your licensing requirements. Especially if you're working, with kids, hair, medicine, anything like that, you might need additional licenses than just your business license. This is also a time when you want to analyze your credit, especially if you're looking for capital. It's very important to know that almost all small business loans, especially startup ones, are going to be based on your personal credit and your personal credit alone. We don't even check business credit here at MCE. So you want to make sure that you have good credit and that if you have hiccups on your credit, you've got explanations for it. And that's where we're a little bit different from the bank. We can look past a few things that a bank might not be able to. So if you weren't able to pay your bills for 4 months because your parents were ill and you had to take off of work to take care of them, that's something we might be able to look over. And then the last thing you want to make sure is that you have your bail team. And what your bail team is four folks, these do not need to be on payroll, who are going to be there to help you as you grow and sustain your business. So the first is a banker. Develop a relationship with the business banker at your bank as early as humanly possible. So if you don't have a business account yet, go to whatever bank you're currently at or where you feel comfortable. Ask to speak to the business banker, talk to them, see what type of things they offer, what kind of incentives they have. Tell them your timeline. If you're saying, look, I'm starting now, but I really want to open up this business in 3 years, they're going to say, great. They're going to check in on you. They're going to offer you educational opportunities because they're going to want you to be successful so that you can eventually get a loan from them. Number two, your accountant. Accountant is going to make sure that you're in compliance with all your tax laws. It's going to make sure that you're paying your taxes on time so you don't get fines. And then it's going to provide you some protection if you're audited. They're also a person that you can, use as a sounding board as you're budgeting for your business. They'll be able to tell you, if things make sense or not. Then your insurance agent. Every small business will need insurance. So talk to a couple of different agents, find the folks you feel comfortable with, and make sure that you've got them on speed dial in case things change. Same thing with the lawyer. While you don't need one on retainer, you want to be saving some money. But when you go to your chamber events, when you go to business networking events, find those business lawyers. Just get to know them, make sure that they know your business so that when you do need to hire them, you're not wasting your retainer money explaining the same stuff again. So next, we're going to go into developing a business plan and cash flows to get a loan. But before I do that, were there any questions on sort of the first steps for starting a small business? Okay, I'm just going to check the chat just in case. Nope. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the business plan. So, what does a business plan, what is it and what does it contain? So, number one, it's the blueprint of your business. So, if you think about it back when the foundation building from earlier, this is going to be the plan that's going to help you build that foundation and eventually build the business up. But it's also something you're going to show to a number of audiences. So, you might be showing it to investors, you might be showing it to banks, you might be showing it to, the construction workers that are going to be doing the work for you. And when you give it to different audiences, you might want to move things around, just like it's a resume. So you want to, take things, highlight things based on who's reading it. So if you find a grant and you're applying for a grant, you are going to want to focus on how you're community minded, how what you're going to do is your business is going to help build that community. If you're applying for a loan at a bank, that stuff is great. You want to have it in there, but what they really care about is your ability to repay that loan. And so that's what you want to have the focus of your business plan be. So now I'm going to go into the four parts of a business plan. It's very good to know that your business plan might not take the same shape. It might not have these same four sections. They might not be in the same order. But if you've got all of this information in your business plan, it's probably going to be a pretty strong plan. So the first thing, your executive summary. This is often easiest to write last because what you're going to be talking about is what your business is, what drew you to your business, and you're going to be making your ask in your executive summary. But one thing you might want to start with is your opening paragraph. Because once you write that and once the reader reads that, it's an understanding of what the rest of the document is supposed to be. So if I was looking for a loan, I would say Nick's Dill Pickles LLC, owned and operated by Nick Rudolph in Baltimore, Maryland, is a wholesaling pickle business that's seeking to borrow $15,000 to purchase new pickling equipment so that we can get into restaurants. So, with those two sentences to start off, the reader knows everything they need to know about my business and what I'm asking for from them. Then, as they read the rest of the business plan, they're going to be able to answer, will I do what this guy is asking me? So the next section is going to be your marketing plan. As I said, this is much, much more than just how you are going to advertise your business. So first, describe your industry, show that it's growing. If you can show that it's growing locally, even better. Talk about that target customer, explain why that customer is your target customer, and then your competition. You want to list three competitors, list what they do well, and talk about what your special sauce is. How are you going to compete with them? Then you want to explain your costs and your pricing. So, this is how much it's going to cost me to do business. And then I'm going to base my pricing off of this. Am I going to be high end, middle of the road, or am I a value proposition? Then you want to talk about your marketing sales strategy. So, how are you going to market your business? Thinking specifically about how the marketing you're going to do is going to translate into sales. So, just saying I'm going to do a social media campaign is certainly not enough. What you're really wanting to do is say, we're going to target these platforms with these people because of X, Y, and Z, or traditional marketing is not the way we go. We're going to need to get booths at conferences because of X, Y, and Z. And all of this is going to help you identify your competitive edge, which is going to help you decide, how to market more effectively anyway. The next section will probably be a little bit shorter than you would think, and that's your operations or your organization. So here you're going to describe how your business is going to operate. That's location, that's the legal form, your management structure. Are you a one-person shop? Are you hiring folks? And if you are, who are those key employees? What licenses will you need? What training will employees need? You want to make sure you've got that insurance that you'll discuss there. And then your quality control and contingency plans, especially that contingency plan. If you have got a sole operator business and you get sick and can't work for 3 months, how will your business continue? The last section is going to be your financial plan. And this is going to look different depending on whether you are a new business or an existing business. For a new business, you want to talk about startup costs. You want to talk about your break-even point. So you do the math and you figure out how many sales you need to make a month to pay all your bills and make a little bit of a profit, or pay yourself really. And then you want to talk about any credit issues that you may have personally. If you are an existing business, you'll want to talk about your business history, your taxes, your profit and loss statements showing that you're making a profit. The financial plan, this financial section will also sometimes contain those cash flow projections, but they can also be a separate document. And with that, we're going to go into those cash flow projections. So are there any questions about the business plan before I move too far forward? Yep. All righty. So what are these cash flows and why do we need them? It's just showing how much money we think is going to go in, how much money we think is going to come out so that we can see if we're making a profit. So why do we need them? Well, if you want a loan, you're going to need them. It's a planning tool. So if you say, look, this is what I think we're going to do, you're going to be able to look at the real numbers, compare them to your plan and make good decisions about what to do next. It's also just going to tell you when you can start taking money out of the business, and it's good governance. So with these cash flow projections, the one that we do is over here on the right-hand side. It's good to know that, me or another business counselor with MCE is happy to do a Zoom or an in-person meeting with you and complete one of these with you. But it is a living document. It's going to change over the life of the business. Not only will not all the cells be accurate, most of the cells will end up being different than what we project, and that's fine. You want to be realistic, even though your business is going to make $3 billion in year one, if you're asking for a $30,000 loan and you show that sort of income, it's going to scare away the folks who make the decisions. So what you really want to show is that in a worst case scenario, you're still making enough money to break even and have a little bit of a profit. You also want to make sure to break down your income and expense streams as much as possible. The more detail you have here, the more useful this document is going to be. Looking at that restaurant example, let's say you've got a bar in your restaurant and you said, look, I think I'm going to do 70% food and 30% bar sales. And you look at 6 months later and you're at 60% food and 40% bar sales. You're then going to be able to look at what's going on in your restaurant and make a decision. So, is the issue that your food program needs help? Or is the issue that your bar program is so strong that maybe investing there is the right decision for your business? And by having a detailed cash flow projection, you're going to be able to make a better educated decision on that. You also want to think about, does your sales change month to month? If you are a landscaper, your March and April will probably be busier than your December and January, and you want to show that. You also want to show your loan and your loan payments as as income and expenses. A lot of folks leave that out, but it's very important. You want to put other financing on there. A lot of people think of banks and folks like us as competitors, but the truth is that we are all collaborators. We all talk to each other all the time. And if we find out that your business has a loan with another lender that you're not telling us about, that's a surprise. And that's the thing that we dislike the most. We dislike surprises. If you say you've got a loan with that other lender, that's going to say a couple of things. Number one, it's going to say that they trusted you to give you a loan. That's a positive. It's going to show that you've been able to make payments on a loan. That's another positive. So you really want to be upfront and honest about everything, and that includes when you're applying for a loan, your credit. So if you have issues on your credit, missed payments, some things in collections, you had a bankruptcy 7 years ago, talk to us about that from the get-go. If you do that, we might be able to mitigate that, or at least get you a plan to mitigate that before you apply for the loan. But if you tell us you've got stellar credit and then we pull your credit and that's not what we see, that's going to be very difficult to fix at that point. Also, we want to make sure you're paying yourself. So not just are your business surviving, but are you able to put a roof over your head, feed yourself, clothe yourself, and have a little bit of fun? So we're going to go into the actual loans that we have next, but I just want to stop and see if there are any questions on the cash flows. All right, so this is our first and most common loan. This is our small business loan for a startup, which is anybody 2 years old or less. That can even be in pre-development. Those range from 5,000 to about 35,000. If you're an existing business, that goes 5,000 to 150,000. So a few hints here when you're applying for a loan. Do not just automatically apply for what you think the maximum is. We want you to apply for is what you need exactly. Another thing that folks used to do is say, look, if I apply for 100,000, maybe they'll feel comfortable giving me 50,000. That's not something that we like to do. What we like to do is fully fund or not fund the loans. And the reason for that is if you tell us you need $50,000 and we offer you 25 and you take it, we're setting you up for failure with $25,000 in debt. So you really want to understand exactly what you need and you want to ask for that. There's also the fact that if you only need 20 and you borrow 35, you're paying interest on $15,000 that you don't need to be. The term is going to be a year to 10 years, depending on the size of the loan. A $35,000 loan would probably be 5 years. Anything over 100,000 is going to be 10 years. While the interest rates are set at 6 to 12%, most of these are going out in the 7, 8, 9% range. And we do require collateral. Of course, wholly owned real estate is the best, but we can be very flexible with that. Anybody who owns 20% or more of the business is going to have to personally guarantee the loan. So even if the business is not successful, those people are going to be responsible for paying back the loan. There is going to be an application fee of $100 plus $25 per business owner for credit report. We only pull TransUnion. We only do a soft pull. If you are approved, there's going to be some closing costs. We'll take that out of the loan. A $50,000 loan usually walks out with about 48,250 or so. We automatically take the payments from your business checking account on either the 1st or the 15th of the month, starting about 45 days after loan closing. But if you know you can't make a payment at least a week ahead of time and you let us know that, we can figure something out. Deferred payments, interest only, even restructuring the loans. Especially as you're starting your business, if there's construction, build out, it takes longer than you thought, that's something we can talk about. On the other side, if you're going gangbusters and making more money than you ever thought, as long as your loan is over 30 days old, you'll be able to pay that off for just the principal with no penalties whatsoever. So that way you get out of paying more interest, you get out of the loan quicker, and then we also now have that money to lend out to folks who need it. So it's a big win-win. We don't care about not getting that interest for a couple more years. We are going to visit you twice a year. It could be virtual or in person. During those site visits, we're going to want to see your financials, and we're going to talk to you about resources that we may have for you. And then last, is your business eligible? And then what type of expenses can you use? So any small business in our service area, again, that's the Eastern Shore, Baltimore City, and then Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Harford, and Cecil counties. You're probably good unless you're in what's known as one of those sin industries, adult bookstores, 100% tobacco, 100% alcohol, things like that. We are able to work in both the medical and recreational cannabis industries, however. If you are in property development or property investments, we cannot pay for the purchase or rehab of a building that you're going to be either selling or leasing out unless you're occupying 51% of that building. What we can pay for are things like your trucks, your big electrical equipment, things that are reusable. So you think about it like, a big power saw, yes, drywall and nails, no. As far as business-related expenses that you can use it on, really anything, from salaries to build out to rent, to the mortgage if the business is owned by the building, furniture and equipment, all of that kind of stuff. Again, unless you're doing that rehabbed property, or if you're a home-based business. If you are a home-based business, we are not able to pay for your rent, mortgage, or utilities. But other than that, you're pretty much good to go. And then the next loan is our credit builder. This is for folks who might not have any credit, maybe have a few dings on their credit report, or who need the money quicker. This is a little bit of a faster turnaround. This goes $500 to $5,000. The interest rate is 9%. They usually go out at 2 years. Collateral is not required. And other than lower application fees and closing costs, everything else is the same there. If you get a credit builder, and you pay it off, you can apply for a larger loan as well. We've done second loans for a number of businesses, but we want to make sure that credit builder is paid off first. Now, how does the application process work? Well, first, we're looking for the eligibility criteria. So we're going to want to see a thorough business plan. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean a very long business plan. We're going to want to know your experience in the field or how you're going to get that experience. We're looking at the strength and realisticness of the cash flows and then the strength of the collateral. As you can see here, it says reasonable credit. You'll notice that there's not a number there. We don't have a minimum credit score, but what we're really looking at is, what you've been doing in the last year or two. Do you have any missed payments? Do you have any past due amounts? Those are the things that seem to make our loan committee most concerned. There are 2 automatic disqualifiers. The first is if a bankruptcy has been discharged in the last 24 months, and the second is if you have a tax debt without a payment plan. We're also looking just for the general economic conditions. Is this the right time to open up this kind of business here? Or are you opening up a pizza shop on a block with five other pizza shops? How are you going to be able to, be successful? And then ability to repay back the loan. If the business is not successful, can you get back into the workforce and make enough money to pay back that loan? So, what is required? This is for us specifically, but it is very similar to a lot of the other nonprofit community development financial institutions. First, you're going to do a client intake form. Ours is online. You'll be assigned a business counselor who will help you throughout the rest of this. But there is an online business loan application. On that, there's going to be a list of required documents. All businesses, whether they are startups or expansions, are going to need a business plan, 24 months of cash flow projections, 2 years of personal taxes, and 3 months of personal bank statements. Also, proof that your loan was turned down by another lender. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have gone through an entire application process. If you're a startup and you go to your bank and they say, we don't do startups, if you can get some proof of that, that's good enough for us. If you're an existing business, you're going to need all of that, plus your last 2 years of quarterly balance, I'm sorry, of profit and losses and business tax returns, assuming you've been around that long. If not, then just as long as you've been around. Your most recent quarterly balance sheet, and 3 months of corporate bank statements, in addition to everything else. There's places to attach all of those on the application online. There's also room to attach other things, and those can be things like reference letters, your lease contracts, licenses, estimates, websites, social media, videos, anything like that. With the reference letters, these can be very helpful. If you've got a chair in a salon that you're renting and you want to open up your own salon, and you come to us with a stack of 50 letters from people saying, look, when she moves over to her own salon, we're going to start going there. It's going to be a pretty easy loan to get approved. So what happens? So you apply, and we take applications through the second Friday of the month. So for those doing the math, that's August 14th for the next deadline. You do that client intake form, you get assigned the staff, you submit the paperwork. At that point, we will review it and we will pull your credit. We will share your full credit report with you. We'll answer any questions, and assuming that it makes sense, we will move forward to the loan committee. The loan committee meets in the fourth week of the month, and they discuss, if the loan will be approved, the rate, term, and amount of that loan. If it's a yes, a commitment letter is issued pretty quickly, and generally loans are closed in about 3 or 4 weeks. So before I move on towards the end of the presentation, are there any questions about the loans or the loan process? Alrighty. So the last part of my presentation is about those resources that are available for you, a little bit of advice, and a little bit of discussions about some other webinars that we have. So first, again, there are more small business resources for you here than anywhere else in the country. So of course, there's us, but most libraries in Baltimore City and Baltimore County have some sort of business center. Oftentimes, that's where you're going to find accelerator programs and pitch competitions. Your local county, or in Baltimore City, the Baltimore Development Corporation, so your economic development corporations. These are government agencies or quasi-governmental agencies that are there to help out small businesses. Your chamber, your local state departments that make sense for small businesses, the SBA and their SBDC, Small Business Development Centers, and SCORES, which is the Senior Corps of Retired Executives, all in tandem work together to help small businesses. Your local universities, I know that Morgan State and Salisbury both have great programs for entrepreneurs. You can get involved even if you're not an alum or not a student. They're always got classes that are looking for places that they can help out. And then your local business organizations, your downtown partnership, your Main Street, things like that. Now, when we're talking about business capital, there are a few things that you want to think about before you're applying. I like to add this on the end of most of my presentations. First, as you're growing your business, you want to keep your job. That's going to help us understand that you can pay it back. You are going to need an accountant, even if you are one, really. The reason why is as you're starting your business, you're going to get in the weeds. And the last thing that you want to do is miss a deadline and not be in good standing and start accruing penalties and late fees. You want to ask for help So what that means is just like I said in the last slide, talk to everybody. You want to be keeping your money in the bank. These are personally guaranteed, so you don't want to be buying homes and cars and opening up credit cards at the same time as you're applying for business capital. And then no business is an island. Be part of your community. People go to small businesses because they're part of their community, so give them a reason to join those organizations, donate to the local softball team. Any way that you can show yourself as part of the community is going to get you more feet through the door. And then to finish it up, we've got a bunch of webinars coming up. I'm doing business plans and cash flows in great detail on August 5th, including creating an entire cash flow from a blank spreadsheet. Then we're going to be talking about some tax tools from the comptroller's office and a few SBA webinars, and there's going to be much more as well. So with that, are there any questions? And this is my contact information. We are able to email the slides. This will be available on YouTube, and you will be emailed a link to this video. All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions. So I just want to say thank you all for coming out and spending your lunch hour with me. Oh, looks like we got something. Oh, you're welcome. And I really, really appreciate you guys coming out. Feel free to reach out to me, whether you're in Baltimore or on the Eastern Shore. Always happy to talk to business owners, even if you're not in our service area. I know the state pretty well and can find folks that can help you out. And with that, I will say I hope you all have a great rest of your day and enjoy this beautiful weather. And we'll see you at the next one.